Wait, so you're telling me that China put out a great game and it doesn't have anime boobs in it? Are you telling me that the hype around this game is completely warranted? And wait, are you really telling me that IGN has made an ass out of themselves again?
That's impossible.
I'm not sure about that. I'm gonna have to go see for myself. Oh my god, it's all true. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no other way to say it. Black Myth Wukong is everything we all wanted it to be, and then some. And on top of all of that, it has already reached highs that most single-player games can only dream of. What type of highs? Well, only the second most peak concurrent player count in Steam history, behind only PUBG. I mean, that's not impressive, right? I mean, live service games can get that in the blink of an eye. I mean, just look at this one that just... Never mind. It also did an amazing job of completely pantsing idiotic game journalists and taking every bullet fired at them and sending it back like Sebastian Shaw. And I am here to tell you that the hype is 100% deserved, because Black Myth Wukong is a certified banger. Whether or not you consider this game a Souls-like, more on that later, it's one that absolutely deserves the praise, despite some of its flaws. It's easily a top contender for Game of the Year and the best combat of the year, and that's saying a whole lot given what we've gotten so far this year. Wait a minute. Oh my god, it's a woman! I didn't think those things existed in this game. Play past chapter 3, you hack. But what about Black Myth Wukong makes it a certified banger, and how has it made everyone go bananas? Well, time to embark on our journey to the west. So strap in, boys and girls, and let's get licked until I can't get in a and let's get down to business. Monkey business. Black Myth Wukong is based around the famous Chinese story Journey to the West. You play as a monkey known as the Destined One, and your quest is to find the 6 relics to succeed the ancient monkey king, Sun Wukong, who you are conveniently a spitting image of, but this world isn't gonna make it easy for you, and as you encounter more Yao Guai, your skills are put to the test in a manner fit for a king. But it's alright, because it turns out that the Destined One has an incredible combat moveset. I gotta give massive props to the animation team. These moves with the bow staff are crisp as hell. I mean, look at your basic light attack combo. I mean, come on. That twirl just isn't fair. I'm no martial artist, but I bet if you showed this to them, they would be impressed. You could tell a lot of passion went into just the animations, but that is nothing compared to the overall gameplay. Now look, a lot of people have been calling this a Souls-like, and they're not wrong for thinking that. It's got many of the elements of one. Checkpoints that revive the enemies around you, a pretty hard difficulty as you progress, a gourd that has limited uses and can be refilled at checkpoints, and a big emphasis on boss fights. But for me, I consider this just a regular action RPG with Souls elements to it, because it's missing one key aspect of Souls games, the corpse run. Most Souls games, when you die, you have to retrieve something from where you've died. Most commonly, your means of leveling up, but in Black Myth Wukong, you don't lose anything when you die. So because of that, I have a hard time calling this a Souls-like, and you aren't dying in enough hits to automatically classify you as one either. Maybe we'll keep debating this for months, but that doesn't matter, because what matters is that the gameplay is phenomenal. But before we get into that, there's a massive elephant in the room. And no, it's not your mom. This game has some pretty big technical issues. Namely, it stutters worse than Eric May. Okay, maybe not that bad, but I played on PS5, and from chapter 2 onwards, this thing would stop and start on a dime. I don't usually have problems with bugs. I've been pretty lucky throughout my life as a gamer, but this is among the worst stuttering I have ever seen in a video game. Forget the frame rate drops and whatever the hell that is. I can deal with that. That doesn't really matter to me as much. But when you're in the middle of fighting a bunch of enemies and the game keeps doing this, I mean, I can let the footage here speak for itself. Not to mention, this happened in multiple boss fights, which, if you've ever experienced a boss fight, is a pretty big problem. Fix this now. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's talk gameplay. But one thing I should mention off the bat, no block button. Yeah, this is a dodge fest. Although you can block projectiles with the sick staff twirl, and hell, you can even beat the hell out of them with it. But in terms of combat, you got your basic moves along with your 3 different staff stances, a variety of abilities, spells, spirits, vessels. There's so much of this shit. All building up focus, which allows you to have more power on your heavy attacks. Each stance opens up different types of combos and ways to approach a fight. You got strong stance, which is your kind of run-of-the-mill move set that you would expect to have when fighting with a staff. And then you have the thrust stance, which allows you to have different ways of plunging your staff into somebody's abdomen from any angle and most reasonable distances. This backstep combo finisher will never not be satisfying. And then you have the best stance in the game, and if you disagree, I will take you to Celestial Court, the Pillar Stance. What is the Pillar Stance, you might ask? Well, this grants you the ability to balance on top of your staff like some Buddhist monk, completely avoiding ground attacks before slamming the hammer of capitalism down upon them. I don't think I've ever had more fun charging a heavy attack in any video game. But then you got your spells, your hotkey abilities. You can turn into a rock to parry attacks. You can become invisible and blindside your enemies. You can spawn clones of yourself. You can make a ring of fire that enhances your stats when you're inside it. And then you could transform into certain bosses that you've killed. I got 3 throughout my playthrough, and there may be more that I just haven't found, but this allows you to temporarily use the boss's movesets with your own health bar and your own stamina bar, which not only is great because you've become the boss, but it's also great in a pinch when you're low on health, kind of functioning as a new lease on life because you can't really die when you're in this form. But none of these spells can touch Immobilize, literally freezing your enemies in place and allowing you to just go to town on them. I don't need to hear anything else. Sign me up! But it's not always a free lunch, and this is what I love about this. Some enemies, especially bosses, don't always stay frozen for the whole time, and some bosses can just straight up break out of it immediately. So you have to be mindful of who to use it on, which saves it from becoming game breaking.
But wait! There's more!
You also have spirit abilities, also known as Chinese Pokemon. A single move from a strong enemy you've collected, a lesser version of transformations, but hit way harder and they deal out certain effects. Praise be to the Wandering White, nobody can handle the headbutt. But there are so many spirits to collect, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface on the amount you can get. And finally, we have relics. I only got 3, I think there's more in the game, but these are your major abilities, granting burn immunity, increasing damage reduction, and stun locking your enemies with a tornado. It also works on bosses. I love this game. But you might be asking, surely if you have all these tools at your disposal, surely it's gotta make the game easy. Well, not only is that not the case because enemies have more health and attack power to compensate for that, but also because every spell, spirit, and relic you use costs mana. And unlike stamina and focus, mana doesn't recover until you rest at a shrine, so you can't just fire off abilities willy-nilly. You actually have to plan and strategize when and how to use them, which honestly is a genius idea. But this is also helped out by an amazing progression system. Now there's multiple sections of skill trees, and while that may sound intimidating at first, it's very easy to grasp. You have either increased stats or different combo enders to your stances, strengthened effects of spells. I don't think I've seen a skill tree in a while where I was like, oh, I really want that. Oh, I really want that. But this though, I pretty much wanted everything in this skill tree, and that's a sign that you've made a great one. That's not even mentioning the buffs you get when you get a relic. There is no question that Black Myth Wukong is absolutely loaded, but it's streamlined in a way that's easy to understand, and that is something you rarely see in games like this today. But what you rarely see in games is the amount of devotion dedicated to why we all came here. What do you say we dive into the boss, baby? Surprise!
Bitch!
Usually this is saved for later in the video, but Black Myth Wukong mostly revolves around boss fights, so get up, bitch, we're doing this early. And you could say there's a lot. 113 to be exact. Now, Wukong's bosses for the most part are an incredible time, and surprisingly polished in terms of moveset. I said most. And you are gonna be laying in on these guys because the majority of these bosses' health bars are thick. Not Final Fantasy thick, but it's not like most Souls-likes where one hit could do a serviceable amount of damage. You need a decent combo string to start making headway, but not too much though. I have to say, for a studio's debut game in this genre, the iframes are surprisingly solid, even though some hitboxes may be questionable. For the most part, the dance, as we call it, is fluid, and some of these bosses are true bangers. But for some, we have a little problem. Something that I didn't think would be an issue, but turns out it is. The fucking camera. This thing is so inconsistent, it may as well be Lamar Jackson. There's some fights with reasonable height on them, which is okay, but then as you get bosses that are bigger and bosses that can fly, it's a literal 50-50 shot. You're either gonna not see them or wind up in their asshole. And it's a shame because it could pretty much ruin certain fights. Like Kong Jin Loong is a spectacle fight, a great looking spectacle fight, but I wish I can actually see him. It's something to work on with Game Science's next title because I wish it didn't feel like I was fighting against the game and not the boss itself. But I digress. Let's talk about these suckers. I'm gonna mainly discuss the Yao Guai Kings, and a good chunk of them are pretty important story bosses, so if you don't want to know now, skip to the timestamp. First up, we have the first banger boss in this game, the Tiger Vanguard. Not even mentioning the fact that you fight this guy in a pool of blood, but this man literally rips off a string of kung fu combos, continuously dives at you, faking you out with a clone before Falcon punching you. Punch! And once he's done with all of that, he does a freaking ninja backflip. This guy's the size of a tree and he moves like it doesn't even matter. Incredible fight. I loved every second of this, and this is just a mid-area boss. More on that later. Next, we got the boss that Screen Rant didn't fight, Kong Jin Star. Jesus, dude, I love this fight. Nothing like fighting a lightning witch in a snowy landscape. It already looks awesome, but then you add the fast combos and how she has to voice every part of them. Which makes her look like a complete idiot when you dodge them. And oh shit, I missed.
So I missed.
The only bad part about this fight is when she turns into Kong Jin Loong because, well, the camera no longer wants to cooperate. So we fought all manner of things. We got a giant tiger, a lightning witch, hell, we even fought a giant baby. What else could there be? Well, how about Buddha himself? Yellowbrow, specifically the second version, the one where you fight him in a giant Chinese diorama, which I certainly didn't have on my bingo card. And my god, does it feel like you're fighting Buddha, because he doesn't just let you go to town, because throughout this fight, this man turns into solid gold, which blocks every attack you had. Sorry, I messed up the name. He's actually called Yellow Armstrong. The path to Nirvana isn't letting go of the self. It's nanomachines, son! It blocks everything except for fully charged heavies. Kinda difficult to build up when he's swinging this massive lightning flail around, sometimes so much that it wraps around behind him and catches you, which happened to me multiple times. All while you have to hear this guy stroke his own ego, which, not gonna lie, is kinda badass. But then he does something I really don't know how I feel about. He'll get you in what looks like a scripted section with some awesome cutscenes, but the hits you take in the cutscene actually damage you. I think you can avoid these things, but I didn't figure that out till after I beat him, and because of that, I wish there was more of an indicator that you can avoid these things. Just have the health bar stay at the bottom. Other than that, this fight is something else. And the last notable good one I think deserves to be spoken about is the Yaksha King, also known as Yoshimitsu from Soul Calibur. The second part of the Red Boy fight, which is great on its own. I have a soft spot for fights that really build up your ego in the first few minutes to then just rip away all of that once it starts getting serious. That is the Yaksha King. The first few minutes you fight with Baji, it's just a torrential downpour of staggering. But once he leaves, on top of the fact that you're fighting a demon with freaking arm blades, you have to deal with giant off-rhythm slices, ground spike AoEs, and everything else. I don't think this game missed the mark on having fun attacks to dodge. Clearly, they did a great job with this. But buddy, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, because while I picked a handful of bosses I wanted to highlight for good reasons, I also brought some that I really want to shit on. Starting with case number 1, the Yellow Wind Sage. Yeah, I know I'm not the only one who thinks this. The first two phases are not that offensive moveset-wise, except for the fact that this guy commits the cardinal sin of going outside the arena, not to mention you're fighting this guy in a tornado, which would be cool if I could see what he's gonna do outside of it. And he's also got some jank hitboxes, like, how the hell did this hit me? But what put this guy on my shit list was his third phase, where he summons a bunch of mini tornadoes that wander around the arena, which would be cool if they weren't the exact same color and the exact same texture of the arena itself, so you can barely see the thing while you're focusing on the giant rat that's trying to bulldoze your ass, which becomes really annoying after a while. Scratch that, it becomes annoying immediately. Enough of this guy. Case number 2, the 100-eyed Taoist master. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is more of a case with me just straight up not liking him than any bullshit that he has. But this is a centipede centaur looking thing. Cool design, but that also means that you have to hit him in the front corners or on the side. On top of the fact that this guy's health pool is about the size of an average person who eats at Golden Corral.
Boy, are you fat.
The moveset isn't bad, and I appreciate that you get help from the Spider Sisters early on, and every attempt after, it starts with him at the health that he lost from the sisters. But then phase 2. Psych, I lied about the bullshit. He takes half your stamina. Yeah, you only have one combo and then a dodge to work with here. Did I mention this guy is an absolute tank? There are some bosses in Souls games, or just action games in general, that may not be criminally designed, but are just straight up not fun to fight. This guy is one of them, but those 2 fights are nothing compared to, hands down, the worst boss in this game. Captain Wise Voice. Let me tell you something about this motherfucker. Not only can you only hit his leg for most of the fight, but you also can't even see him. He breaks out of immobilize immediately once you get him down. And not only that, he takes a page out of a 100-eyed Taoist book, except this time, he takes part of your health. Wow, I love this mechanic from the Pagoda realm. Why don't we use this in the next boss fight?
Oh, that's stupid! Really stupid.
His moveset is also one of the worst in the game. There is not a single interesting attack in the first phase, but the second phase is more notable for the wrong reasons. How am I supposed to know where this janky ass beam is gonna go? I hope you like fights like this because nobody else in their right mind does. So those are the boss fights of Black Myth Wukong. Overall, a pretty great package, but since so much of the marketing and press was focused on the boss fights, the question I had going in was what happens in the middle of that? What is there to say about the level design? I was skeptical about Black Myth Wukong's levels because it definitely took a backseat to the boss fights in both the marketing and the game structure. Like, there's a reason I talked about bosses before this. I was worried it might not have a lot of work put in and, you know, just be serviceable. But after playing through it, I'm impressed. I would like to take this chance to commend Black Myth Wukong for being the first action game in an Asian setting to not have a burning village. Yeah, those don't count. I've had this gripe about games, specifically Souls-likes set in Asian settings, that every single world looks the exact same. Even good old Sekiro had this same problem. And it's like there's nothing wrong with it, but goddamn, can we get something original here? And that was the feeling I had for the first 2 areas, Black Wind Mountain and Yellow Wind Plains. Both beautiful looking levels, but kind of generic, and I was worried, oh boy, here we go again with the same thing. But then Chapter 3 hits. Whoa, a snowy area with fallen temples and monks coming back to life? We don't talk about the Pagoda realm. Chapter 4 brings you to a spider hideout and Master Hand. Chapter 5, you go to a literal volcano. And Chapter 6, Mount Huaguo might be the best area in the entire game. This ain't just your average setting. You can clearly see the passion these devs had for making these areas feel unique. There's also a ton of enemy variety throughout the game. I don't think I remember an area having the same enemy types as another, at least off the top of my head. Each offered many different victims, and none of them I would really say were bullshit. The elemental cards can eat shit though. But what makes it great is that every main area also has a secret area attached to it. Slight nitpick here though, you can only find these through certain side quests. I would have loved to just have some areas that you just stumble onto randomly. I think it would have made exploration feel a little more organic, but am I really gonna complain that it's not easy to get to? No, come on now, I'm a Souls player. What do you think this is? Speaking of these secret areas, I mentioned every location has one. I didn't get to the one in the Flaming Mountains because I can't find the rest of the cards. But each one has something interesting to offer. Guanyin Temple is small, but lets you fight the giant baby. The Secret Kingdom of Somalia is a fun little detour to the past where you fight the giant beetle that the Yellow Wind Sage has in his fight. That fight would have hit much harder if I did that beforehand. Zodiac Village is a hub world where all your NPCs gather. Don't know why that had to be secret, but by far the best and one of the best areas in the game is Purple Cloud Mountain. I did not think that there would be a major developing storyline with this secret area, but this place has it. Hey guys, look, I found Mesmer's snake.
That tarnished, it seemeth.
Wide open foliage, 3 major bosses, the story with the snake lady. Screen rant! Truly amazing stuff here. One thing I will say that is completely immersion breaking though are the invisible walls. There are so many of them, and I'm not just talking about walls on cliffs that prevent you from falling off. I mean places you think Wukong would be able to get to, but he just can't for some reason. Guys, just block these areas off. Don't dangle the carrot in front of me if there's nothing here, please. When I first started playing, I was worried that the areas would be too linear, and while they are linear, once I started finding the secret areas, that's when things started to click. And that's when it hit me that Black Myth Wukong is not just a boss rush game. It actually has something more to offer you. Alright, so story time. As always, if you don't want to be spoiled, skip to the timestamp. Alright, let's roll. So as I said, Black Myth Wukong is based on the ancient Chinese story Journey to the West. Now, I haven't read this story, but according to my research, this is supposed to take place following the events of the story. And after one of the best openings I've ever seen in a video game. Yeah, I was wondering what these giant titans were in the trailer. Yeah, turns out it's the Celestial Court, basically the Court of Heaven. And you fight one of their emissaries on a literal bed of clouds before getting yeeted into a mountain. I gotta say though, I played in English and the English voice acting is surprisingly good. Like, I was coming in expecting Rise of the Ronin level bad, but no, everyone here does a pretty good job.
And they send you and those knuckleheads to threaten me. To obey and serve once more. I understand that too. But what I don't understand is... you bastards killing my kind!
Now there's gonna be people saying, you have to play in Chinese for full immersion. Listen buddy, I'm American. I'm gonna listen to my native tongue, and I know that Game Science will do their due diligence and I'll get an accurate translation. Unlike whatever IGN used. The story has one key plot throughout, with other mini plots sprinkled in for each chapter. Everything's going normally for the first few hours, pretty generic, not much to write home. Is that a headless man singing me Chinese? You know, this actually kind of slaps. Right around chapter 3 is where things pick up when you meet Wukong's former admiral, Zhu Bajie, who not only gives your mute protagonist somebody that actually provides something, but he's a pretty good character with an interesting backstory. By the way, I'm riding a gigantic turtle right now. This game's amazing. Chapter 4 is where they flesh out his backstory with this family of spider ladies, and it was around this time I started to really get invested in the story, and it just went from there. In particular, the story they tell about the Bull King's family in chapter 5. Honestly, by the end, I thought it was amazing. The kingdom, if you can even call it that, is in the middle of a coup by the queen's son, the Red Boy, who turns out is a Yaksha, and it's alluded that the Bull King may have destroyed his home and his race, and he's the only one left. I could be 100% wrong about this, correct me if I am, but the Yaksha king started this coup, and once you beat him, his mother, the queen, begs you to spare his life, and in return she'll give you the tornado fan, and her and the king will go into hiding. But then the son is like, no, their delight lies in our submission. I will never submit. And then he just sticks his arm blade through his throat, and that's it. What's funny is you still get the fan, so this lady literally got nothing out of this deal. That with the dialogue that Bull King tells the Destined One, everywhere you go, death follows, referring to Wukong, this hits pretty damn hard. Look, I know I said earlier that I don't consider this a Souls-like, but it certainly follows the Souls formula of storytelling, and it's not elaborate, and it's not a 30 to 40 hour soap opera that's gonna win some awards. It's a very simple story that gets the basics down so you can focus on the gameplay, which is all it needs to do. I didn't need a descriptive sequel to Journey to the West, and honestly, I don't think anyone did. But again, for a game like this, I will take it. Each chapter is segmented into its own mini-story anyway, so it's not like there's a consistent plot besides you getting the relics of Wukong to succeed him. And each chapter ends with a little animated short story, and they each have their own animation style. This is awesome. The first 3 in particular, they all ended some messed up tragedy. There's one where these fishing villagers find this monster that provides them gold and pearls whenever he opens himself up. For a while they worship him and bring him tribute, and then by the end they just say screw this and just rip him apart. It's f***ed up. The one in Chapter 2, a man saves a small fox from a trap and takes it in, and then it goes through a montage of him living his life, meeting a woman, getting married, having children, becoming a wise old man, and then his entire family is just eaten by the grown-up fox. Turns out the whole thing is a dream, and he sees it as a premonition, so, of course, he kills the fox and starts wearing his pelt. By the way, there's a side quest tied to this in Chapter 3. I love this game. I mean, these are expertly done, and they're a great way to cap off the chapters. I really appreciate the work these guys did on this. But even though I'm talking spoilers here, I really do not want to spoil this ending. At least the one I got. There's a few different endings I've heard. I want you to play it for yourself because it's phenomenal. And a little ball busting. But again, if you were going to make a sequel to one of the most famous works of literature in history, funny enough, I haven't even read it, then this is probably the best ways to do it. And being a fan of games with stories that are vague and stories that you have to go out of your way to find, this was right up my alley and it didn't disappoint. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Black Myth Wukong is now in the pantheon of games that have generated a lot of hype and actually fully lived up to it, at least in the past few years. I have nothing but praise for Game Science and what they did here. This is among the greatest debut games a developer has ever had. This is the Lies of P of 2024. It just takes you back to an age where games were just straight up fun to play, without the need to be this overproduced cinematic narrative experience. Just give me a bow staff and let me beat the shit out of some mythological monsters. We all need a little Wukong in our lives right now. If you're someone who's not part of the 10 million people that have bought the game, what are you doing? Go out and buy this game. It is worth the money, it is worth the time, and it is certainly worth a few Game of the Year votes because it is a certified banger. No doubt about it. This ain't no monkey business. It's time to go bananas because Black Myth Wukong is a well-deserved 9 out of 10.